Happy Independence Day to all my American friends, and to those of you who are not in the United States. I'd like to tell you a little something about this strange country that seems to dominate the planet and has for a century. You see, uh, back in the 1990s, in the early 2000s, I was a research engineer with a large company, a career long ago, and I had the great privilege of being assigned to work in Germany for 2 to 3 weeks at a time on several different stints. They had a much better facility for making the high performance fluorine containing polymers. So I went over there to work for periods of time and get a bunch of things done. And it was a great experience. I had been outside of the United States before, but there's really nothing quite like having to work with people closely. You have to get along, you have to get things done, regardless of how you feel about things. But when went over there several different times, uh, one of the things that I enjoyed the most was living in the little town of Burghausen on the Austrian border on the Salzach River. And it was a sleepy little town, just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. But apparently, there weren't that many Americans that came through. When I went into the Cafe Uhu after having been gone for a month or two, my favorite little cafe there, I heard the person who served me a beer walk back and say, "Der Ami kommt wieder." The American is back. The American. There just weren't that many of us that came through the town. And so I suddenly realized that I was representing my country. I mean, for many people, I was the American that they ran into. And so, well, a little bit of self aggrandizement born of loneliness and homesickness, I started to make sure I dressed properly and had good posture and was very respectful and kind to everybody. Uh, it was well, it gave me something to do. And it was a process that I started to call flying the flag. In other words, I'm representing my whole nation. We've heard many stories about the ugly American abroad and all that. I wasn't going to be that. I was going to blend in and I was going to represent my nation as well as I possibly could. There's something to do. Now, again, it's much more difficult when you're working closely with people. And I had the great pleasure of working with a man named Harold. Uh, Harold, well, he didn't like Americans, okay, which made it a lot more fun. He thought that we were just undisciplined and just kind of out there. He was of Prussian descent and very much a strict scientist. He had a portrait of Carl Friedrich Gauss in his office, and I really liked him a lot. But one night we were out and drinking the liquid bread that they call a Dunkelweiss, and a big, huge Moss, a liter of it. And Harold asked me while I was taking a drink, he said, with all these different ethnicities and different peoples and all this, what makes you an American? What, what does it mean to be an American if you're not one people? And fortunately, the Moss of Dunkelweiss gave me some time to think of a good answer, and one came to me. I put down my mug and I said, "We hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Harold looked at me and said, "That's it?" I said, "Yeah, that's our catechism. That's our statement of beliefs. If you believe that, you're an American." Interesting. I could tell he wasn't buying it, okay? But he, as a German, he appreciated a direct answer. And we began to discuss really what it means to be a person of one nation or another. Now, I would like to think that this was somewhat enlightening for Harold. I don't know. But it certainly was enlightening for me because I had never thought of it before. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to represent your country and to be some shining example for the rest of the world? Well, there's some basic, simple things that are common to every culture in the world, some respect, some dignity of bearing, etc. But there's also that sense of optimism that anything can be done. At one time, Harold came in or I sorry, I came into the break room and everybody was kind of laughing and talking in German. And I said, "Well, what's up?" And he said, "We just learned that uh, in America there are no problems, there are only opportunities." And they were laughing about it. And I said, "Yes, that's right. Optimism is at the core of what we are." And they looked at me like, "You really believe that? Like, what are you, like some kind of child?" But we were communicating, we were getting it through. But moving forward and always finding some opportunity in any crisis is what we are. Well, it was good for me to be able to sit down and think this through and articulate it and have those kind of questions thrown at me and respond, even if they didn't necessarily like the answers. Some of this I learned as a child growing up in Miami. The Cuban exile community uh, was very influential in my thinking. See, they weren't immigrants, they were exiles. Cubans always believed that, well, someday we'll go back or whatever. Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, he's roughly my age. He went to South Miami High School just down the road from Palmetto. Um, I know this guy, but he's the son of exiles, and he wears a little Cuban flag on his lapel. To him, it's always about appreciating what we have here in America and moving it forward, taking the tough stands against those who would enslave us, but also appreciating what we have. Because, after all, he and his whole family escaped communism and the totalitarian regimes. And all of these things are like holding up a mirror. If you've never been abroad, if you've never had a chance to talk to somebody who fled to this country for the purpose of really preserving their life, but also advancing their opportunity and making something of their life, if you've never experienced that, you really can't know what it means to be an American. I'm sorry. It's important for all of us. Now, for the rest of the world, I know that what we do in America doesn't always come down that way. What we are inside the nation and what we are outside the nation can be very different. That's what's important for us as Americans, but for everybody from the outside as well. It's critical to blend those two. I mean, after all, this is the dominant country of the planet, for better or worse, and might continue to be if we get through this. But what it really comes down to is a series of values. It's not an ethnicity, it's a culture that believes in moving forward, but first starting from that bedrock foundation that we are given from birth: basic human rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's not until you have a chance to really fly the flag and see how this plays out, even in a nation like Germany that has been through so much more than we have, to really understand what that means to them as a people. Communicating that, understanding back and forth, is absolutely critical to understanding the great gifts that we have in the United States. And for that matter, the great gifts we still have to give to the world, and what the world can give to us as we all come together and appreciate what we have, what is important in life. The basic principles that we are indeed a free people and that freedom is something that you are born with, and moving forward together to realize those dreams, to realize everything that makes it good in life. That's my message for the 4th of July. I am so privileged to have had that opportunity, especially on somebody else's nickel. And I hope that everyone else has. If you have some other stories of your own, please share them in the comments. Happy Independence Day to everybody in America and everybody around the world. I hope that our gifts have been well received and useful, and I hope that everybody in the world can realize the basic freedoms that they have been born with and have the opportunity to be everything they can, the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.